Welcome back to Burning the Red Shirt. We're back with an early kickoff here at 4 p.m. in God's time zone. That's inside joke, guys. But anyway, I got Chris and Andrew here with me again. You guys doing all right?
Doing good. I don't think that's an inside joke. I mean, I think
everyone's on the inside at this point.
Everybody
solid verbal, right?
Yeah, we have to agree. Central time zone is the best time zone, right?
And I am in it.
You're the only one in it.
And you guys are looking from the outside in.
Who actually originated it, though? Is it solid verbal, or is it that the dudes from like SB Nation, or who is it?
That podcast played nobody. Papham?
Your boy Godfrey.
Nobody. I think Godfrey did it. That's my personal opinion, but
he's ATL like you, right?
Yeah, he is. But I think he's not local anymore. I think he's in like Mississippi.
Really? I don't give him money to hear his thoughts on his Patreon or whatever. So per sources, he keeps all of the good info behind his Patreon. So besides the clickbait that he tweets out, so I never actually get anything good from him.
Well, news guys, I got 16 subscribers to the Burning the Red Shirt YouTube channel.
Yeah,
in case you're wondering. But we want to kind of jump into this poll question that was tweeted out on the BTR Twitter account. Just full disclosure, I 99% of the time run the account, but this 1%,
you don't got to do that. You don't got to do that.
I'm not even saying who. Somebody took control of the account and tweeted this question out. Won't name names, but the question was: we are getting deep into spring game season. How much do you think spring game performances matter? Zero relevance, very little relevance, fairly relevant, or extremely relevant. Now, the poll says 52.6% say very little relevance, and that's what I voted. I don't know what you guys voted, but that's my thought. What'd you guys vote?
I voted a lot of relevance to corrupt the data set.
Of course you did. Of course you did. Chris, what'd you vote?
Same as you. Very little.
Okay. So my thinking on that is there's a lot of different angles you can look at it, but in a spring game, there's so many different factors. If a guy gets reps with the ones, that would generally you say, okay, that's great. But if he's getting reps with the ones because two of the starters are injured or out, and then they're locked in starters, does it really have that much relevance? For me, not necessarily for this particular season. Maybe dynasty it does, but for this particular season, I don't feel like it does. Because
I think there's a lot of variables that come into play with this, which could go on forever and ever. But like, I think unless you're actually watching all the games or watching all the games that you're gonna then take away pieces from, there's no relevance, right? Because like a good example would be LSU had their spring game, and I think Corey Kiner was out and TDP was out. So then I saw somebody say like, "Hey, who started at running back?" And they said it was Trey Bradford. And I was like, "Oh man, that's awesome! I got Trey Bradford shares." And then all of a sudden, I read like 2 tweets down, and it's like, "Oh yeah, by the way, Kiner and so and so didn't play." And then like I read a little bit more, and it's like Armani Goodwin had like a 60-yard touchdown run. But like unless you watch it and like see the actual play maybe on that 60-yard touchdown run, or like it's 1 versus 2s. It could be 2s versus 3s. It could be 2s versus just the most random guys like that are out of position. There's just a ton of stuff that goes into it that like you have to really be all in on that for it to matter. And I would think too that like the younger, or I should say like the C2C guys probably get the most out of it because they actually care about third stringers, because they need so much of that information over time. Like if a guy is a second stringer, that's fine because they're pegging this for long-term coverage.
But don't some school, they have all different formats of spring games, right? Like they'll do like offense versus defense, how it's scored. Like I don't study spring games a whole lot, but I've noticed like they'll score, like there'll be like 48-6. but it's like, how does the defense score points? Is like they just get a turnover? Is that points? I don't.
Yeah, it's like turnovers, stops,
3 and outs.
Okay, in fairness, I don't really know, but I have seen the formats. Or like, it's very misleading when you like read a headline like offense beats defense 52-7. Like, okay, well, how's the defense scoring points? But I figured it was more so with just stops and turnovers and blocked field goals, whatever. But anyway, Andrew, you got any thoughts on the relevance of spring games?
Did you listen to Nick's podcast about this, CFB Winning Edge? Nick in his verbose format talked for like an hour and a half about this. Like no problem. Like Xavier and what's his name, Bogman didn't even get a word in. It was great. But it was interesting hearing Nick's perspective on the echoing or maybe boiling down what a lot of coaches say, that basically they've like barely installed any plays, and I heard that term for the first time this year, like install. I never really understood what it meant before, and I still don't. Like you played football, Zach, so maybe it means something to you. I guess the idea is that you don't practice your game plan every week and go until game week, right? And then you just decide like we're going to do X, Y, and Z this week to attack this team's weaknesses and emphasize our strengths or whatever. But that for spring ball, they might have only installed like 5 plays. So that bears itself out in a lot of ways in terms of what you actually see in the spring game. But I think there's so much there's so many different ways that a spring game can be misleading. Have you watched any this year?
I haven't. No, I haven't.
I've caught some of a handful, I would say. So not a ton, but I have a theory that, or maybe I don't know if it's necessarily a theory, but I feel like spring games are more pass heavy than teams pass more in spring games relative to what they do in the regular season. Like, I don't think these teams are running for the most part. I think that they generally try to avoid running the ball a lot of the time, because it just seems like that's like, if you're the spring game format, like from a tackling perspective, you're pretty much not tackling at all a lot of times. Like if you watch the Ohio State one, the ones weren't getting tackled at all. The
quarterbacks don't they have like the black jersey on or something?
Yeah,
like
but even beyond that, like the when CJ Stroud was out there for the first X amount of series, the play wasn't allowed to end with a tackle. Like once the defense got close, they just blew the play dead. So if you're not going to run the ball in that format, basically, right? Because like, what's the point? Like, there's always players close to the ball when the ball is being ran, so we might as well just pass it. So if you're trying to take anything away from, like, for instance, like NC State threw the ball all over the place, right? Great that Devin Leary threw for like 300 yards and change. Yeah, against the twos in a format where they're probably throwing the ball every single down. But I don't know. Like, I don't even think you could take anything in the way of like tendencies from a spring game.
That's a good point, because I was thinking, as you said it, I was like, why would these teams want to put out what they're going to do week one? Like, you're not going to throw out there, this is what we're going to do, and give everybody all this film of what we're going to do. Like, we're just going to keep it very generic, very just pretty basic, to just see if our guys can beat another guy lined up against them in a live action with live rounds, essentially.
That was like the whole USF thing.
Yeah.
Was that like they didn't want to broadcast it because they didn't want people to see it, because they didn't want to give away tendencies.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. Andrew makes a good point with like the tackling and stuff that I didn't even think about. I will say, like, Virginia Tech spring game, Virginia Tech had 2 long touchdown passes to Caleb Smith, and Caleb Smith's the lone returning receiver. So that's kind of intriguing, but it's also Virginia Tech offense. So don't worry about it. But what like, if you're not paying attention to the actual game, you would know that the quarterback basically got sacked, but they didn't want to blow it dead. So they just let him throw it. And it was like a 60-yard touchdown pass. It's like, I mean, like, it's possible he could have thrown that still, but it's that type of stuff that you miss for sure.
Yeah. like the Boise State spring game, the defense won the spring game. So how do you look at that? Do you look at that as like, man, the offense just sucks, or is the defense really good? Like,
I think team tendencies are toast. You don't take away anything team related from these games for sure. Ones versus twos, no tackling. You get points for punts and 3-and-outs and stuff like in some of these formats. I think you just can't take away anything team related from this.
The way I've always looked at it is it's a good thing that your defense. I mean, I guess it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing that your defense is ahead of your offense, because if your defense is ahead, that, in my opinion, would mean that your defense knows where to be. They're up to par, whereas the offense might be trying to learn a new system, new players, new whatever. But I don't know that it really means anything in April, whereas you're going to get to July, August, and you're going to have. And another point we talked about pre-show was, what about guys that have just recently transferred in? Did they even play in the spring game?
Yeah.
Or the impact there, yeah. What about, or I should say maybe, I was going to say, my favorite thing until about 30 minutes about spring games was Vanderbilt football posted like a score. It was like offense ties defense 27-27, and then somebody retweeted it. It was like, Vandy can't even beat themselves, which great. And now my favorite thing is the New Mexico State spring game. Andrew, do you want to dive into the analysis there?
Dude, I feel bad because I feel like I rip on New Mexico State all the time. Like from last year when some beat writer posted a snapshot of what their facilities looked like, and it was on par with like your local middle school football field. But dude, what is that analysis that Nick dug it up, right? Like there was no mention of a single player, right? Not a single player's name was mentioned. The only person's name mentioned in it was the head coach, even though like I stumbled upon. I assume it was a different beat writer, given that whoever wrote this thing up could not have tried harder to write in generalities. I stumbled upon your boy Zach Watkins. I think he broke like a 60-yarder in the spring game or whatever it was, spring scrimmage, spring practice, spring middle school thing that they did over there. But yeah, dude, that right. I need to know where that write up came from. The
Winning Edge found it. And to give 2 or 3 great sentences to tell you what we're talking about here, in this like 6-sentence article or clip that he gave us,
the same one I'm looking
at. Several thousand people filled the shady side of the stadium to watch the Aggies take the field under the guidance of first-year coach Jerry Kill. They give a Jerry Kill couple of sentences, information about him. And it says, the game featured the Aggies offense against the team's defense. No official score was kept, but the Aggie offense scored several touchdowns on some big plays. And then my favorite sentence is, besides fans, the New Mexico State band and cheerleaders also attended, giving the event a festive feel. Like, what is that? Like, tell me you're not actually at the game,
right?
Without actually telling me you're at, like, come on, like, that's just so good.
This one gives a little bit more. It says, Kill said after the scrimmage, they call it a scrimmage, that if the season began tomorrow, freshman quarterback Diego Pavia would get the start for the Aggies. But that's it. Like, that's the only player mentioned.
Maybe you could take him in the draft this week, Chris.
There you go.
Drafting in the 10th spot, so maybe it's not that bad of a reach.
They're going to be like, man, who is this guy? And everyone's going to go try to dig up the guy, and you're like, oh, okay, well.
Nobody watches me take a guy in a draft and says, like, oh, who is that guy? I got to, like, that's like a Josh thing, like a Nate thing. Like, they pick a guy, and you're like, I've never heard of him.
Do you think they take guys in those drafts just to be like, hey, I'm watching this guy, just so you can see that they're watching?
Heisey has noted in public that he's done that before. I would never admit that. Like, I want everyone to think that I'm super sharp and everything I do is with like tactical purpose.
Exactly.
So I would never admit that. But like, we're in the best ball tournament that Chris and I are in, where we do 2 drafts a month. I don't think you can be that like nonchalant even with your late round picks when we're drafting in April and like you're gonna randomly lose 4 to 5 guys for dumb reasons leading up to the season. Like the idea that it's just a late round pick, I'll throw a dart. Like that dart better have some line of aim where you can actually see him hitting the dartboard because your team's gonna a trick just by itself without taking into account that you're maybe taking 5, 10, 15% dart throws to begin with. Like,
and we're drafting without bye weeks. I'm not looking up everybody's bye weeks.
I could have multiple weeks without a tight end going, and I would have no idea.
The only position I do it for is tight end, and I only do it like the first 3 guys I take all have to have different bye weeks in my head for the most part. At least 2 of them have to have different bye weeks, but we're doing it without different no bye weeks. So like, I think if anything, people are scared to draft certain guys because they're on them and they don't want people to know they're on them.
So
they want to hold it to their chest a little bit.
I was doing some of that in Mike's $5 leagues. In hindsight, I should have done it more because $5 isn't enough to get intel on who I like, but Greg has structured this tournament in a way where it's enough incentive for me to start taking players like Johnny Langdon, Rutgers quarterback / tight end in the last round. I just took him in the last one, and I got complimented on it, so I felt good about that.
It's a Rutgers guy. That's like an auto. You get one of those a draft.
Yeah, but yeah, dude, I definitely feel that way. I don't like, depending on the format. And depending on how much buy-in there is, like I don't want to fire all my bullets.
The $5 and $6 leagues we were doing, you're completely right. Not worth it because like there's just so many things you could smoke that league, and it wouldn't be because of all the different outliers and variables that are in play here. It's like who knows what's going to happen. I will say the closer we get to August, the more legitimate those leagues are going to be because. You'll just have way more information.
Raise the stakes on them, I think it makes sense for him to keep it low right now because there's like he's practically begging people to join them. But like once there's more interest, once demand exceeds supply, then he can raise it to like $50, $100 a league.
He still has to play himself though.
What do you mean?
If he's is he just hosting or is he entering himself?
You don't think the CFF site is just a print fest over there?
It is a print fest. But I know that man's trying to buy a boat. He's trying to potentially buy a house. There's a lot of things moving in the works for him. Speaking of Mike, since you brought him up, he posted ADP data this weekend.
Did he?
And he called me grumpy because I messaged him and was like, well, that was the Ohio State stuff that he posted that he called me grumpy for. But the other part, I didn't actually say it to him. You can't really post tight end premium ADP data in the other best ball data. Like that completely muddies the water, right?
Yeah. From a data perspective, that's a very bad practice. Like that would not fly in my professional day-to-day.
Yeah. I mean, because like the problem is, or the thing is, right, like Brock Bowers in a regular format, mid-second rounder, Mayer's like a end of third, early fourth, but like they're pretty much both off the board in the first 12 picks. Like Brock Bowers is a top 8 pick. Yeah. So you like see it in the ADP data and it muddies it, especially when 3 of the 10 drafts that he's posted are it. So like that really changes things.
Definitely.
Yeah, I was just looking at it and I pulled it up. It has Bowers as the like 15th, 18th highest ranked player.
What are you drinking? That's not Tropicalia. It's too dark.
I finished its iced coffee.
So you lied.
Well, there's my Tropicalia.
So you got your upper and your downer.
Yeah, I'm
down that
combining. Yeah.
Nice. All right. So I guess as far as spring game relevance, we all kind of are on the same page with relevance.
Well, I think we need to wrap it up with one other thing here. No spring games really matter except for the Georgia one.
Right.
Georgia dominated, and they have 4 tight ends that are all going to be All-Americans.
They're all going to be playing on Sunday.
Yeah, there's not. They actually eliminated the receiver position, and it's only tight ends.
Dude, if Jared's idea of running all four at one time, that would warm my heart, dude. That would make me so happy.
It would be amazing, not a doubt.
We need a fun quarterback on that play too, though.
Don't look at me.
I think I mean, Kenny McIntosh had a good throw in the semifinal game. Maybe to break your guys' hearts. Maybe we just put him out there full time.
Could be much worse. Stetson had 2 interceptions, right?
All right. Well, we're going to move on. Andrew, you said you had a theory, a dynasty theory, how you kind of look up startup drafts for dynasty.
Yeah. So I've never executed on this, and I think to actually do it, it would need to be in a dynasty league where we're talking about like multiple thousands of dollars a year in buying, because it would be so time consuming. But I think it's like the optimal way to play college fantasy football dynasty at this point. So I've done two startups, I think, at this point. I'm in 3 dynasty leagues. I inherited the one that we're in with Wes, immediately turned that into a contender. But your league was the first one I ever did, and it was a total disaster. Like my startup was
my league.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, like that team. What did I do? I think I tried more or less just to win it all in year one. Didn't give any consideration to the dynasty component, and that didn't like. My first 2 picks were Travis Green and Antoine Goodley, their senior years, and they both sucked. So that didn't exactly get me started off on the right foot, and that it took me a year or 2, I think, to kind of get that team to round in the playoff form. I still am taking it down, but like I'm in contention for a playoff spot every year. It's fine.
In fairness, you had a strategy up until like this past season where you would really hoard picks.
Yeah.
But now you've gotten away from it. We've talked about it before.
Yeah. Then Heisey started a dynasty league this past year. And that year, my strategy was more or less, not necessarily trying to do this intentionally, but it played out this way where about 50% of my picks, like alternating every other, were between kind of going for it now and playing more with an eye toward the future. Which I think is like more or less, I think, a decent way to play dynasty. I think I feel really strongly that. So have you ever played dynasty NFL or dynasty baseball?
I've done dynasty NFL.
Okay, people try this strategy in both those formats, and I think it can work in both. By this strategy, I mean the idea that you punt year one, and you just start picking all these. Baseball, what you do is you just draft down like the top 100 prospect board, more or less. And football, you punt year one, right? And you're just taking rookies, you're gathering rookie picks, you're trading out for future year rookie picks and stuff like that, and you're punting year one. You know you're going to lose. I think that strategy has absolutely, like, if you do that in college fantasy football, you're setting yourself up. You're just lighting money on fire for absolutely no reason. And the difference is, right, we are getting no more than 3 or 4 years utility of these guys, no matter what.
At the most.
So you are chucking away 33 to 25, a minimum of 25% of that guy's life on your team, right? And I think that when you could give consideration to how a fantasy year actually plays out in college fantasy football, you don't need to like play. It's the idea that you can just draft down a prospect board or ESPN top 300 and that is going to lock you into the best assets is not akin to what you can do in NFL Dynasty and in MLB Dynasty, right? And I don't believe that I'm talking from a perspective of a straw man fallacy where I've just created I think that's the right fallacy, where I create an argument that doesn't exist and then knock it down. I've seen people try to do this in college fantasy football, right? And it might work in the sense that you might your team that you draft, you're definitely losing year one, right? Or potentially. Strong possibility. And then your team might get stronger in year 2 and year 3 and year 4. But after then, of course, it has no like that you're done with the startup, right? Because
yeah.
But I don't think that you're locking yourself into any sort of guarantees for years 2 and 3 and 4 because the the point from which you're drafting as your source of truth for future year production is not that strongly correlated to future year production, right? Think about what we see on the waiver wire after week 1. If you gave me an option of drafting from the waiver wire after week 1 or an ESPN 300, I think that you can make a good case that the waiver wire after week 1 is a better source of finding value in the years coming up. So
it's kind of like the Vampire League. Like
exactly.
Like you don't draft, but you just waiver wire it the whole way. You could probably be a top half of the league. I mean,
I think you can kill the idea of drafting from a startup purely for this year as a bad practice. I mean, maybe it works, but I just don't think with Dynasty, I just don't think it's a great idea. And I don't think it's likely to lend itself to success, just drafting seniors, right? Though I think you can get a win from that, obviously. And I don't think the idea of punting year 1 is very good either. I think, though, I had really good results from my idea of kind of coin flipping between the present and the future, but it wasn't necessarily the most guided and directional approach. It was just kind of top of my mind. I think this is a good direction, but to optimize it, I think what you really need to do, and I tried to find this chart through like Google Images and try and find it from somewhere that wouldn't result in me stealing it from where I work, because I don't feel like getting fired and stealing a proprietary asset. But none of you, I don't think, work in media. I don't work in media directly. Like, I just help these people figure out how to report on their data. But when you're running media, basically what you're doing is you're planning on ads running over a certain lifetime. And I might run ad A today and it runs for 2 weeks. And ad B might start in a few days and it runs a few weeks later or a few days later. Ad C might start in 2 weeks and it might run a little later on. So I think what you actually want to do with College Fantasy Football Dynasty is, and it's called flight planning. You're planning all these different flights that start at different dates and end at different dates. And I think optimally, and it would require such work to do it, is you want to, especially on Dynasty leagues where, and 2 of mine are like this at this point, where, not yours, the other 2 I'm in, where the rosters are just huge. And my first inclination was to hate the idea of these huge rosters, because I'm like, oh, like everyone's going to be owned. It's going to make waivers less fun. It seems like why don't we just make the league more teams? Like, if we want all these players to be taken. But if you're playing in a league with these huge rosters, I think the optimal way to use that is to try and structure your roster like a media plan, where you have players optimally entering your lineup across their lives, their flights at different points. So if you can time out, okay, let's say I have 10 quarterbacks. Maybe I have 6 that are starting right now. And then I have like 2 or 3 that project to get a starting job a year or 2 from now. And then 2 or 3 that project to get a starting job 2 years from now. I feel like that's an optimal way of trying to structure your lineup from the jumping off point, from the starting point, right from the point where you're drafting. And you can optimize on the fly too. It's not something that you just do, that you just have to do from the point at which you draft. But I think like when we're working with these 50-team rosters, like I end up just collecting such trash on them. Like, it's just players that like maybe I saw him make like a play here, a play there. And I'm like, ooh, I think that guy is good. Like, I'll own him just in case he pops. But it's not really with any true strategic nature or strategic vision. So and counter to the NFL side, right, where I don't think you need to think about things that way NFL, because these guys are playing for 15 years. Like, right, even if you have a team that starts with like I have Brady in an NFL league right now, and I have like Kirk Cousins, and on that same team I have Mariota, and it's kind of out that way. But I don't think you need to think about that way, because these guys are, especially at the quarterback position, the idea is they're playing for a long time.
Yeah. You seem very passionate about this.
Yeah.
This is just the way I talk when I get in the zone and actually.
Well, you don't get like this often on this podcast. That's why I'm really just sitting back and enjoying this.
To try to find a way to get in this conversation. I like the idea of like kind of not necessarily 100% going 1 for 1, like on a startup, old new, but I like the idea of kind of making it close, because I do think you're right. Like it's not a given that these young guys are going to be it, but you can find like the super young guys, like the very high end that can make it. But like a good example, like Jack Sorensen, I picked him up in a dynasty league last year, like week 3. Like it is completely possible to find a guy. It's not typical, but it's possible to find these guys that are like very high performers on the waiver wire, like you're saying. So get your old studs, cycle in some young guys. And the nice thing is too, right? Like if you were to go like a Gibbs or maybe like a Zach Evans, like you're still potentially getting some good some good starts out of it. So
yeah. Well, what's tough with that whole idea, Andrew, is you have a guy that you say, okay, in 2 years he's going to be the starting quarterback. Let's say you grab that guy and he finally gets to start and he's good for 1 year, then he's gone. So now you've stashed this guy for really 1 year, because we've already talked about the turnover every 3 to 4 years. Like that's hard to do.
Do you want the practical example of what got me thinking about this? Because
sure, that would be nice.
Right. So in Heise's league, where my team is offensively good, I've got like 8 quarterbacks or so right now that I feel super confident rolling out any given week. And I was like looking at it, I was like, we only start 2. What is the point of having these 8 guys right now? So this was the thought process, part of the thought process that led to me thinking, well, why don't I want to shop Garrett Schrader. Just generally speaking, he terrifies me from the standpoint of like as an asset that could explode or implode at any point. And I didn't need that volatility on that team. But I was like, what? Like I could trade him for a pick, right? And then take like some guy off the ESPN 300, and maybe that pops, and that's great. Or why don't I try and get a guy that I feel like is more likely to start to enter my lineup at the quarterback position once some of these guys burn off and go into the NFL. So I flipped him for Kyle McCord, who I think is definitely getting the OSU job when Stroud's gone after this year. And so from like, and that got me into thinking, just from a strategic perspective, right? That I feel like that's the best way of stacking your assets. Like there's no point of me keeping all 8 of these quarterbacks.
No point in stashing a guy you're not going to play.
What was that?
No point in stashing a guy you probably won't ever start. You might as well trade him for somebody that will be a starter for you next year or down the line.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think of it as like a true, like flipping him for a pick. That's a wild card, a true wild card, or flipping him for a pick that I will then draft a ESPN 300 wild card with. Right. This is like, the idea is I actually have some certainty that when I think about what my lineup will be like next year, like this is going to be good to go.
Yeah. Until a guy transfers in and ruins it all.
It ruins everything, yeah. I think I did that with not 8 quarterbacks. I think I had like 4 or 5 quarterbacks. But like at a certain point, you're not going to be able to roster all of them. All you're going to do, like you need to be able to fill in a bye week. You need to have kind of like just in case someone gets hurt. But for the most part, and it's really only a quarterback thing, because running backs, receivers, there's the flex position. We all play in leagues where starting probably 2 running back and 3 receivers, and then maybe
so many too.
And there's 2 or 3 flex spots. But like at a certain point, there's no reason to have 5 of them, right? Yeah. Like even if you're taking a mild hit on value, it makes more sense to get rid of one.
Yeah,
rid of what you think is the right one, and then adding elsewhere, because then at least they can contribute. Whereas like like last year I traded away Sam Howell for 3 flex players, and all my flex spots were weak. Well, it didn't necessarily work out like I wanted it to. And it ended up because I have Jermaine Burton now out of it, who sucked last year and now is going to be amazing per everybody.
Right.
But like, I use Sam Howell for 2 weeks, let's say. Well, I got Chris Smith and Jermaine Burton out of it. Like, would you take 2 weeks of Sam Howell or 2 seasons of those two? Like, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, if you have, let's just use my dynasty league. Like, we only start 2 quarterbacks, but if you roster, there's some teams in our league that have like 9 and 10 quarterbacks, and you look at their rosters, like half of them aren't playable. They're just not, and they're kind of like lottery ticket guys anyway. They're hoping that they step into a good situation and then they can start them. But even in my team, like I'll have 5 quarterbacks, and there's 2 usually that I really like, a third one that I'm okay with on a bye week, maybe a 4th one. And then after that, like if I have 4 great quarterbacks, I can only play 2 of them. So what am I holding on to a guy that's going to graduate after this year, just because more so for security than capitalizing on his the asset and maybe getting assets in other positions that'll help me. I'm guilty. I'm terrible at it. Like I'll get this quarterback. All right, I'll have him for kind of like a security blanket. Like if I lose one quarterback, I'm okay with his 25 points on every week just to hold me over till he comes back or whatever.
I think that's fine. You get in these weird spots where like
some lunatic in the league with Heisey just cut the New Mexico State quarterback from last year because of what you said, Chris.
You get in these weird spots, right? Like last year, I had Malik Willis and Hendon Hooker and Bryce Young. You know, like you're not going to trade away one of those because, like, if you look at Hendon Hooker, and I love the guy, like he's not going pro. So you figured he was coming back. You get another year, and Bryce Young, he's not eligible to get drafted. So like, yeah, I think my 4th quarterback was solid and was definitely playable, nothing crazy. And my 5th quarterback was like maybe fringe, but like you don't sell a Hooker or a Bryce Young because you still have that next year to do it. You know, I think it's all like kind of Andrew said, like the whole flight planning of like, well, you know, if I keep this guy, am I keeping him because he might out of nowhere pop and I get him for the rest of this year or next year? Or am I just going to use maybe these 8 spots at the bottom of my bench in some of these crazy large leagues and say, these are going to be my 8 random guys that are young, that could be in good spots, that have shown to be potentially valuable based on all these other metrics that you care about, and see what happens. And then after a year, you can probably get rid of a couple of them at least, right? So,
okay, question. So when you stash guys, do you stash them with the mindset of they're going to be a star for you one day, or that you hope their potential always stays high, that you can flip them into a guy you know is going to perform for you? Like if you take a guy, you know, okay, it's probably not going to pop for at least another year.
Mm-hmm.
I got 2 great examples of this that I need to get rid of, that I'm just too shy to do it. And both of them are from the same school, but it goes with the train of thought. You're drafting young guys that are 4 stars or 5 stars in great offenses. So Who are those 2 guys for me? Trey Bradford, Trayon Bridges. Like those guys are done. Like they're done. And I'm holding on to them because I'm scared. But like the whole idea of drafting those guys is you're just drafting a name in an offense, right?
Yeah.
Well, Bradford went to LSU, so like the value is there because running backs, but they have Kiner who's been good. You got
he entered the portal. He just entered the portal.
And then he like left and then came back and then like left and then came back, right? Like he went from Oklahoma to LSU. He left the portal.
Kiner just entered the portal.
Oh, Kiner did, but okay, so that's nice. So that's why I'm not going to get rid of Bradford. So Bridges, right? Like he even had some off-field stuff. Like that's what you're drafting for, and then you're just hoping that they hit. But the hard part for all of us, especially myself, is like, when do you learn to cut ties?
That's my
all
thing.
It takes is one situation where you don't cut a guy, that he falls into the right position. I have a perfect example again. Tanner Mordecai. Didn't beat out Spencer Rattler. I got him for free. And I was like, well, he's got a 5% chance of beating out Rattler. And so I'll put him on my bench for the time being. He played a little, looked decent. So I just held on to him. And then he transfers to SMU. And now I'm going to make bad decisions for the next 3 years.
Well, like I got like Javon Baker. I held on to him for 2 full seasons thinking, okay, maybe he pops for Alabama, right? He's the next big Alabama receiver. You're kind of just hopeful at that point. But now he's transferred to Kentucky, and I've held on to him. I can't cut him now, right? Like
I think you give it some time, but if he's not relevant in the first 3-4 weeks, you cut him.
Right.
You're,
or you trade him now with the potential that he could be something, and somebody pays you a 2nd-round pick or 3rd-round pick for him, and then
Can I actually answer your question?
Yeah, go for it.
Instead of whatever Chris did. I feel like I'm like 80% of you're talking about. The idea was when we're making pickups with an eye toward the future. What's the strategic vision there, right?
Yeah, like are you stashing them to eventually play them, or are you stashing them to sell high, essentially?
I would say it's 80% for me, just based on if I actually like the guy and think like, okay, either I watch the guy play, or I can like actually contrive in my head a path for this guy to stardom or startability at minimum. Like that 80%, that drives like 80% of my pickups that I have an eye for the future. 10% definitely along the lines of, especially like at the end of the year. So your league is so different because of the rules in terms of when we can pick up guys and keep them relative to like the other 2 leagues I'm in, where at the end of the year in the other 2 leagues, it's time to like do some maintenance and actually like kill all the seniors and bring in guys that are like that are going to be useful in next year. In like Wes's league, I cut like 20 guys down the stretch and brought like, but the waiver wire is pretty thin because I think we're like 14 teams in there and 50 person rosters. So I added a bunch of guys that like I really have like no feel for, but it was just like basically maybe I could flip them. Like I added Jacoby Criswell, the dude that it has what would you give him, like a 30% chance of taking down Drake May for the UNC job? I feel like that feels fair. And I thought it was like I could see them making the wrong decision. I thought that like at the end of last year there was a chance that was the case, and I still continue to think there's a chance. So maybe he gets a nod and I can flip him. So, but like when I make that sort of decision, I think when I'm roster cleaning, let's find a better way to phrase that. I feel like that has like scary connotation. When I'm cleaning up my roster, that's not really nice either. When I'm getting rid of, when I'm putting aside the seniors and trying to add down the stretch for upcoming seasons, that's when I have an eye towards players that, hey, maybe I can flip them if 1 or 2 things breaks right. And then the last 10% is my conspiracy theories. Truly players that like there's nothing that has like actually come to pass in recent times, at least that like gives me a real light at the end of the tunnel. It's kind of just like a hope and a prayer, but like it's college fantasy football, so it can happen.
So my strategy is like at the end of the season, like in our league, you know, like with the last available pickup time, is I try to get guys that are young freshmen, sophomores that I feel like they might step into a prominent role next year, and then grab them at the end of our season and then potentially flip them in, you know, March, April, May, leading into the season, like after a good spring game performance. So like, oh, everyone goes to check to see if he's available and then put him in their draft queue, right? And then I have him. So then, and then somebody goes and offers me a trade for him, and then you go from there. Now I say all of this as if I'm so good at it, but I'm really not. I just have the 1 out of 100 that I've ever done that I get, and I make the trade. And I'm like, hell yeah! I just flip that nothing into a third.
Oh, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, the problem for me is that I like trading is difficult enough as it is. The people that want a guy aren't active. They're not paying attention. So like for me, I'm never going to pick up a guy just for the potential of possibly trading him. Like I might end up trading him, but it's more because then I hit on him and I have other options, and he's the guy I find I can get rid of. I think Andrew, you're probably the best trader out here because you're just your tenacity is out there, and people will just give in. You know,
He keeps sending the same offer.
Yeah, we've all been there. But I largely just think I'm just trying to accumulate talent and see what happens. And then if I end up trading that guy, I end up trading him. But
like you accumulate talent and then parse through who is worthy for your team. And then,
well, here's what's going to happen, Zach, right? Like you pick up a guy, he turns out to have a great spring game with some nice potential. And then you try to trade him for a second rounder. And they say, well, all he had was a good spring game, and he's not done anything in college football before. Yeah. And he's a former 3-star, and he's this. Like, how are you getting any value out of that? Like, you're going to get better value than what you got, right?
I think it comes down to what you believe he is. Like, if you really don't believe in him, but you think that, okay, well, maybe they'll believe in him, and you picked him up for free at the end of the season, you flip him into a pick that you can pick who you want.
You better have a high enough pick because, like, at a certain point in these leagues, what does a 5th rounder do in our league? What's a 4th rounder do in our league? They're just all, when you get to that point in these rookie offseason drafts, like, you could hit on it, but, like, a guy you take in the 4th round, you could have gotten in the 8th round because everybody's got their guys and their pick comes up, so they pick that guy.
That's another good point. Like, everybody values, like, in NFL,
value is insane.
Everybody kind of has the same values for the most part on all the players in the NFL. Like, who's good, who's not. There's a couple sleepers, if you will. But the player pool is pretty set. There's not going to be any like huge surprises. Where in college, you and Andrew might be on a guy that I've not even read about. Whereas vice versa, I could have a couple guys that you've never even heard of that I'm going to believe in that you have no interest in. I'm trying to pull up something, but no, I think there's a lot of factors, especially depending on league size and everything. Because you guys say you guys play in a bigger league than mine. Actually, Andrew, I want to address something you said.
He took offense to something that you said.
No. It wasn't
talk crap about his league. And
no. It wasn't that I was offended. I'm just curious.
This is Andrew's last ever episode at BTR.
When you said, like, when you pick up players at the end of the season, like you said, my league is different. Was that a good different or a bad different? Because we like, just so everybody knows, like I put a limit on, or a deadline on when you can just freely pick up players at the end, like not at the very end, like it stops for everybody. And you can't just churn all your seniors out if you didn't make the playoffs and go recycle them and get a bunch of young guys for the next season. If you're gonna do that, you have to do it like way before the playoffs are starting.
I think that sort of league structure has nothing but positive outcomes for the health of the league, right? I mean, I just talk about it, I was talking about it through the lens of I play the game differently relative to the rules, because if you're not, I mean, you're not trying, right? But I think we've definitely seen I've seen in some of the dynasty leagues and keeper leagues that I've been in, like people get upset, rightfully so, when people are burning their teams down, and it's having an impact on the league, right? When they're just making trades that maybe that send all of their assets to one team, or cutting everyone on their team, right, because they're out of the playoffs. So anything that can disincentivize that, or at least make the calculus of that more interesting, I think is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a positive. Well, because what ends up happening, right, is like Andrew or myself, whoever, right, that's not going to make playoffs, has a 6th-year senior, a 5th-year senior, or a guy that's no doubt going to go to the NFL. Like, why would we have them on our roster, right? You just get rid of them because there's no point. You pick up a young guy, and then all of a sudden now whoever's got the most waiver money available has got a stud, right? Like, that's the whole thing that, like, annoys people. And I think it makes a lot of sense.
Well, my thinking was always that you don't want teams that aren't in the playoffs basically fueling the teams that are in the playoffs. Because if you have a bunch of seniors that are on your team that are really good, if you haven't traded them away because you missed the trade deadline, that you drop them, you cut them, and now all those teams in the playoffs can have completely different teams now because they can go pick up all of your best players. That was really the only reason I did it.
Yeah.
Because I want the integrity of the playoffs to be the team that you had all season, and you're not getting, like, for example, like let's say you had Stroud on your team and you didn't make the playoffs, and somehow you didn't make the playoffs, and you cut him, and now a team that's already in first place goes and gets Stroud, and now you're not even going to touch that team. So
I mean, I think yes, you're right. I don't think you could get rid of Stroud. I think you'd be dumb to drop him. Because
I'm just saying
the principle or the idea is out there, and you're correct.
Yeah, I'm more so saying a guy that would probably be going pro, or if he's out of eligibility, either way. Yeah. But Chris, there's something you said that kind of sparked my interest. It's like, what is a 5th rounder in our?
Go ahead.
And I was wanting to see where I drafted Mateo Durant, and it was
coming.
And it was the 3rd round. But what interesting enough, though, is you know who was drafted in the 5th round? I want you to look.
You got to zoom in on that thing if you want me to see it.
I want you to see.
That didn't help me.
5th round pick.
Yeah. That's how good at picking I am. I got Raheem Sanders in the 5th. Find where I took Malik Willis and then come back to me. Okay. No, but the thing is, right, like, where could I have gotten Raheem Sanders? I could have gotten him in the 6th or 7th. That was my point, is that, like,
his relative, like,
you just had to come hit me with it. We talked about Duke football this past week, and of course that I should have never done that because of and the thing is, I went for it. I never go for it and make trades. So I was like, you know what? Sure, let's do it. I'll give a pick and Raheem Sanders, and we'll call it a day, and let's see what happens. And then, Duke's offense is Duke's offense, and I got.
I'm looking at some of these picks. I'm like,
can I see it?
Zoom in on the round 5. Let's just take a look for S's and G's.
I took Brad Roberts 5th round.
Strong pick.
Can you guys see all those?
Schrader by Golf Coasters. Okay.
Billingsley could be potentially good.
Jared Hall is a good pick.
No, who took him? Oh, I did.
Yeah, I couldn't read when I said that. I was giving you props. So. Stribling is a good pick. Look at these picks in this.
Yeah.
Coastal Carolina D did well.
At the time, these all look like really good picks, right?
Go look at the 6th round.
Okay.
Just because let's see how hot we got.
Oh, shoot. How do I get that thing over there?
Oh, boy.
I just want to. Can you see it? 6th round?
We need a little bit more.
I can't.
We got a Velus Jones. Okay. JJ McCarthy.
Michael Jackson.
Devin Tompkins. You're not going to find a better pick than that.
N'Kosi Perry, I had him, but I didn't draft him. But other than that, there's not a whole lot there. 6th round. Like 7th round, you're looking at Shamari Brooks. Yeah.
Shamari Brooks. If there's a guy that we need to get in the pod, it's Shamari Brooks.
He had another year. He had another year. He should have came back.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to kind of throw that out there because
I appreciate that.
Who could you get in the 5th round?
Apparently a lot. That's the 5th round's the sweet spot in our draft.
I think that's kind of where the end of the good picks are. Like the other ones are just really, really hopeful picks after that. But yeah. So in terms of Dynasty, we kind of covered all different angles of how you want to attack it. But I think that's a very interesting discussion. Andrew was very passionate about, and
I have another Dynasty topic that I'm even more passionate about. That we're not going to talk about it now. But it's just a tease for another show. But I've been workshopping this theory for probably like 6 months at this point.
Hold on. So before you get into that,
I'm not getting into it.
I think every episode you workshop a theory.
We need a cat's theory on every single episode.
just related to society, the economy, or is it strictly fantasy?
Preferably fantasy, but we'll take anything you can give us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that brain is moving way too fast. You got some good stuff.
I'm Northeastern liberal elite. What do you expect?
Yeah, I think it's good stuff. Honestly, we're different. We have to set ourselves apart from all these other bland college football podcasts.
Really quickly here. I know we said we wouldn't talk USFL, but that's pretty amazing that somebody got cut by wanting a piece of pizza, right? Did you see
what are you
that?
talking about?
I saw that. I didn't really read into it, but I did.
The worst part about so Davion Smith got cut from the Pittsburgh Maulers for disrespecting a hotel worker, I think is what it was. And they posted, USFL or Pittsburgh posted a video of the coach talking to him about why, basically, if you got fired at your job tomorrow, there would be a 3-minute video on you getting fired. That's what they did to this guy. And it comes down to the fact that he didn't want to eat chicken salad. And someone basically was like, is that going to, and he was like, can I get pizza basically? And they were like, no, is that going to be a problem? And he said, yes. And he walked away and he got cut. Amazing stuff this year.
Way to stick to his guns.
Didn't the Giants have some wild story with that's similar? Maybe some guy got cut involving food. I forget what it was though.
So let me ask you, do you guys like chicken salad?
I used to not be about that life at all, but
I prefer pizza.
I can't deny that.
I definitely prefer pizza. Chicken salad chick is delicious.
Yeah.
But give me pizza all day.
I've never eaten there. My wife has eaten there multiple times. She always says, oh, you'd probably like it.
They got a little bit of everything. If I like a food, then you'll like a food because my pickiness is just toast. It's crazy.
Okay. Well, it's one of those things I probably would like it if I actually went there. It's getting me in the door is probably going to be the hardest part. Because there's other things around there that I would rather have. That's the thing. I'm not really picky. Once I'm somewhere and there's a menu, I'll find something to eat. I'm not going to not eat. But getting me in the doors, you really got to sell me.
Andrew, final question. Are you a picky eater / maybe what's a food thing that would be considered weird if you got any?
I don't know. I feel like my food tastes are not super interesting. I was definitely picky growing up.
Northeastern liberal elite food.
Are you the guy that's
I despise tomatoes?
Oh. You're I was just gonna ask, are you the guy that eats because you have to because you need nutrients?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good. Because those are the most interesting people. You got to feel bad for them.
Yeah. No, I mean, I find tomatoes absolutely offensive from the texture perspective, but I mean, I'm all about ketchup, so.
It's the softness of it. It's just weird.
It's gross.
Yeah.
All right, I have one question, food-related question, just so we stay here. 3 toppings on a pizza. Go.
All meat stuff. I don't care. Pepperoni, bacon, sausage.
If this is the only pizza you could eat for the rest of your life, what is it?
I love meat on pizza, but I would not go all of them. I've actually come back from that a little bit. I'd probably go pepperoni, sausage, bacon. You put too much on it, it just gets overboard.
3 toppings. Pepperoni, spicy Italian sausage, jalapenos.
Oh, well, you like a good kick then, huh?
Yes. I could eat that pizza every day, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Andrew?
I think it's a margarita pizza with pepperoni on it.
I also have a theory that a pizza is not a pizza unless it has a meat on it.
It's a wild theory.
A cheese pizza is just cheese bread. No, I'm not doing that. I need a meat on the pizza. I don't care.
Chicago style pizza. Thoughts?
I've never had it. I want to try it.
I think I've eaten it maybe once.
I'll never touch it. I'm anti-cheese. I need light cheese on my stuff anyways. I will never touch.
So you don't Like big deep dish. Is that what you're talking about?
I go light cheese. Domino's is perfect for me. I can go light cheese, extra sauce. I'm a sauce guy, so I'm in heaven.
I've never done that.
I'm in heaven.
I like cheese, fine, but it seemed interesting. But I did have somebody tell me to do the hearty marinara sauce instead of the default.
Can you do that and let me know? Is this Domino's?
I've done it. It's good. Now I don't know.
What's the difference?
I don't know that it's a game changer or anything, but it does taste a little different. I don't know how to really explain it to you. Just try it. You're a big sauce guy. You probably like it.
Big sauce guy, big time. Were you guys
name the podcast? Big sauce guy.
Big sauce guy. That's my new Twitter handle. Were you guys impacted by when Domino's rebranded and redid their bread, their crust with like the garlicky stuff? Remember when they did that?
I live in Jersey City and work in New York. I'm not eating Domino's.
There's a time and place for Domino's, man.
Chris, yes, I was impacted because Domino's used to suck.
Like I like it.
I hated Domino's. Like I would never eat it. Now they did whatever they did is great. It actually tastes way better.
Nobody thinks Domino's is great pizza. It's trashy, just great $6 pizza. Like
I can literally
it is
go
what it is. 3
minutes from my house.
Yeah,
and bring it home.
Cheap. It's it's
carry out deal.
Quick.
Carry out $7.99 a large pizza.
The one around me does it perfectly. Whatever I ask, whatever I put in there, they do it. There's value in that. It's not going to be like your great, authentic, New York style pizza from a mom and pop shop. But
okay, so
how much do those pieces run you,
Andrew?
Oh, worth probably like $18.
Yeah, I got a pizza for $6 in 20 minutes, and it was delivered to my door. I get there's a certain appeal to Domino's. That's all I'm saying.
Now we don't have the luxury of having just all these pizzerias around our. At least I don't.
I'm about to order right now.
Oh, what are you ordering while we're live here? Still.
Rustique Pizza in Jersey City is my go-to spot. Maybe they'll sponsor us and give me free pizza down the line.
That would be pretty sweet, actually.
Yeah, but
he'll have his little right on his name. It'll have brought to you by
the bottom line. I've always wanted a pizza sponsor.
Yeah.
Have you consulted your wife on this dinner choice, or are you just doing it without her?
No, I'm alone in the house for the next couple of days. Margaret and kids are at Margaret's parents, so we're all set.
I was gonna say, I couldn't make that type of swift decision without consulting.
No,
I don't even have kids.
Well, I would make the decision. If I ask what's for dinner, I don't know. What do you want? And it's okay, fine. I'll just order pizza. And then it's you should like pizza again? I'm like, well, you had the opportunity to change, pick something else.
I think we need, before we get explicit and blocked on Spotify, we need to stop this. Ratting on our wives and significant others.
Well, I can cut this out. This is just the YouTube extended cut.
Yeah. Make sure that when we tweet this out, we tell people to don't listen to the final 10 minutes of the show.
No, I'm cutting out the last 30 seconds, but up until then.
No, we should kill everything after it's done with college football. No one wants to hear this junk.
Are you kidding me? This is what makes us different.
This is what makes us.
My pizza spot's closed, so that's exciting.
So you only have one?
I have my favorite spot. Is Domino's open on Mondays?
It's not like Chick-fil-A, where it's closed on a day.
Oh my God! Is it open on Mondays?
Let's wrap this up before we embarrass ourselves more.
All right. Well, that's enough pizza talk for the night, for the evening. So until next time, guys, I'll see you guys later.
Peace.
See you guys.